Have you ever wondered what the darkest and most terrifying secrets hidden within the pages of the Bible are? The ones many prefer to ignore? Today, you're going to uncover revelations that could completely change the way you see these sacred texts. The Bible, this collection of sacred texts that has spanned millennia, is not just a compilation of stories and commandments. It also carries between the lines hidden secrets, mysteries that often go unnoticed. These secrets can challenge our perceptions, question what we believe we know, and in some cases, even leave us bewildered. But how did these secrets come about, and why have they remained hidden for so long? From the earliest manuscripts to modern translations, the Bible has passed through countless hands, each leaving its mark. The texts have been copied, translated, and interpreted by different cultures and societies, each with its own view of what these texts should mean. Throughout this process, certain passages have gained new meanings, while others have been silenced or relegated to oblivion. Imagine a river running for centuries, winding through mountains and valleys. Along the way, it accumulates sediments, stones, and other impurities. The river, while essentially remaining the same, also changes as it carries these elements along its journey. So is the story of the Bible. As the centuries advanced, external elements, whether cultural, political, or religious interpretations, accumulated around its words. Some of these elements enriched the text, while others obscured it, hiding certain aspects of its true nature. These secrets, then, are not just the result of intentional mysteries, but also of a natural process of textual evolution. When the first religious leaders, both in Judaism and Christianity, decided which texts should be considered sacred and which should be discarded, they were consciously or unconsciously shaping how these secrets would be perceived or ignored by future generations. For example, during the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the Church decided which texts would be part of the New Testament. Books that presented divergent views or didn't fit the dominant narrative were set aside, considered apocryphal. But these apocryphal texts, like the Book of Enoch or the Gospel of Thomas, often contained views and stories that, if included in the Bible, could have drastically changed how we understand certain events or teachings. Another layer of secrecy comes from the translations themselves. The Bible was originally written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, rich and complex languages. Translating these words into other languages without losing nuances is a monumental challenge. Often, a single word or expression could have multiple meanings, and choosing one meaning over another could profoundly alter the understanding of an entire passage. Furthermore, throughout history, religious and political leaders have used the scriptures to justify their own agendas. In times of war, revolution, or reform, the Bible was often reinterpreted to serve the interests of those in power. And with these reinterpretations, certain secrets were intentionally kept out of reach of the masses, known only to those who had the knowledge necessary to decipher them. These hidden secrets are not only in the words we read, but also in the words we don't read, in the stories that weren't told, and in the meanings that were lost or altered over time. Revealing them requires a deep journey, a willingness to question what has always been taken for granted, and an open mind to discover what lies beyond the written words. Just like a river that hides precious stones in its depths, the Bible hides in its pages secrets that, when revealed, can change our understanding of the world, faith, and ourselves. Among the most disturbing secrets of the Bible is the story of the fallen angels. Angels, those beings often associated with purity and divine protection, play a crucial role in the biblical narrative. But not all of them followed the path of obedience to God. Some chose to rebel, and that choice has had terrifying consequences for humanity. These angels, known as fallen angels, are mentioned in different parts of the Bible, but it's in the book of Genesis where we find one of the most intriguing accounts. The story begins almost enigmatically. When men began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves. Who are these sons of God? Many scholars believe this term refers to these fallen angels. These celestial beings, attracted by the beauty of human women, descended to earth and united with them. From this union came the Nephilim, powerful and feared giants who walked among men. These Nephilim were not just physically imposing. They also symbolized a corrupted world, a world where the boundaries between the divine and human had been violated. But the rebellion of the fallen angels didn't stop at this transgression. According to texts like the Book of Enoch, a work that was excluded from the biblical canon, these angels not only disobeyed God, but also taught humanity forbidden secrets. They introduced the use of weapons, the practice of witchcraft, and even revealed knowledge about astrology and other mysteries that God had reserved for himself. These teachings further corrupted humanity, plunging the world into violence and sin. God's reaction was swift and severe. He saw that wickedness had spread across the earth and that humanity, having learned these dangerous secrets, had strayed from the divine purpose. It was then that God decided to send the flood, a catastrophe meant to cleanse the earth of this corruption. However, the legacy of the fallen angels was not completely erased. Their stories and the impact of their actions continued to haunt humanity through the generations. The fallen angels represent one of the darkest aspects of the Bible, a story that shows how even divine beings can choose the path of evil and how that choice can have devastating consequences. They remind us that the line between good and evil is thin, and that knowledge, when misused, can be both a blessing and a curse. The impact of the fallen angels and their union with the daughters of men didn't end with the flood. The most notorious legacy of this union, the Nephilim, became one of the most mysterious and disturbing enigmas in the scriptures. To fully grasp this mystery, it's essential to dive into the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text that, although not included in the canonical Bible, offers a fascinating perspective on these gigantic beings. The Book of Enoch, attributed to Noah's great-grandfather, reveals details that the conventional Bible only briefly mentions. It tells us that the fallen angels, also known as the Watchers, came down to earth in a time before the flood. There were 200 of them, led by an angel named Semyaza. By taking human women as wives, they fathered a hybrid race, the Nephilim. These Nephilim, described as giants with superhuman strength and colossal size, quickly became a threat to humanity. The Book of Enoch describes how, in addition to their massive stature, they had a violent and insatiable nature. They were ravenous in their hunger, consuming everything in their path, including humans, which only increased the corruption and chaos on Earth. But the corruption didn't stop in the physical world. The Watchers also brought with them forbidden knowledge, which they taught to men and women. They revealed secrets of metallurgy, leading to the creation of weapons, and the mysteries of alchemy and magic, which corrupted spiritual practices. These teachings were one of the reasons why God saw the need to intervene drastically to restore the order and purity that had been lost. The Book of Enoch goes further, detailing the divine punishment for these rebellious angels. The Watchers were imprisoned in an abyss, an eternal prison where they would await the final judgment. Their children, the Nephilim, on the other hand, wouldn't survive the flood. However, their souls, condemned for their actions, would become the evil spirits that roam the earth, known in many traditions as demons. The figures of the Nephilim and the Watchers add a dark layer to the biblical narrative. They aren't just antagonists in an ancient story. They are symbols of what happens when the boundaries set between the divine and human are broken. They serve as a warning about the dangers of unauthorized knowledge and the transgression of the limits established by God. These giants, these beings born out of disobedience, left a trail of destruction that echoes through the centuries. And even though their story isn't widely discussed in the canonical scriptures, it persists in apocryphal texts and oral traditions, reminding us of the power and seriousness of choices that challenge divine order. The devastation caused by the Nephilim and the fallen angels was just a prelude to one of the most haunting episodes in the Bible, the 10 Plagues of Egypt. This event, which shaped the destiny of the Hebrew people and changed the course of ancient history, is often seen as a simple act of divine punishment. However, when we take a closer look, the plagues reveal even deeper and more disturbing secrets. The plagues begin almost symbolically, with the transformation of the Nile's waters into blood. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, suddenly turns into a river of death, its fish dying and its water becoming undrinkable. This first act wasn't just a display of divine power, it was a direct strike at the heart of Egyptian civilization, a clear warning that something terrible was coming. As the plagues unfold, each one seems to target a fundamental aspect of Egyptian life. Frogs, lice, and flies invade the land, followed by the death of livestock, painful boils, hail mixed with fire, locusts that devour all the crops, darkness covering the land, and finally, the death of the firstborn. Each of these plagues wasn't just a natural disaster. They were signs loaded with hidden meanings, each one directly challenging the gods of Egypt and their supposed protections. The question that arises is, why so many plagues? Why this series of catastrophes and not just one? The answer might lie in God's attempt to show not only Pharaoh, but the entire world the extent of his power and the futility of resisting his will. The plagues were a systematic demonstration that there was no refuge or Egyptian deity capable of protecting against the power of the God of Israel. Each plague challenged a specific area of Egyptian life, while simultaneously discrediting one of their gods, showing that they had no real power. But there's another layer of meaning here. The plagues weren't just punishments, they were also warnings. God gave Pharaoh multiple opportunities to free the Hebrews and avoid total calamity. Each plague served as a reminder of divine mercy, a chance for Pharaoh to reconsider his stance. But Pharaoh's stubborn refusal to release the Hebrews, despite all the clear signs, only led to the intensification of the plagues. This narrative also raises a profound question about the nature of free will. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart, mentioned repeatedly throughout these passages, suggests that at some point, Pharaoh's will was overridden by divine will. This is one of the most disturbing secrets of Scripture. The idea that in certain cases, God may intervene so deeply in human history that even the ability to choose can be suspended. The plagues, therefore, are more than just a simple series of punishments. They are a complex message about power, choice, and destiny. They show us that God's power isn't just destructive, but also instructional. Each disaster was a lesson, an opportunity for change. And in the end, the final and most devastating plague, the death of the firstborn, brought a brutal and definitive end to Egypt's pride, finally forcing Pharaoh to free the Hebrew slaves. This cycle of warnings, refusals, and consequences is a powerful reminder of the nature of divine judgment. It's not hasty but meticulous, giving those involved every possible chance to repent. And at the same time, it's a warning to all of us about the dangers of ignoring clear signs, resisting what is inevitable, and challenging a force that is beyond human understanding. The intensity of the 10 plagues of Egypt left a deep mark on history, but God's power shows itself in equally impressive ways in other biblical episodes. One of the most terrifying is the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, two cities that, according to Scripture, were wiped off the map because of their extreme wickedness. The story of these cities is one of the darkest and most controversial in the Bible, offering a disturbing glimpse of how divine justice can manifest. Sodom and Gomorrah were known for their moral corruption and depravity. The book of Genesis tells us that the inhabitants of these cities were so consumed by their own desires and sins that there was no longer any remorse or fear of God in their hearts. Their wickedness had reached such a level that cries against them reached the Lord, prompting direct intervention. This story introduces us to Abraham, who tries to intercede for the righteous people who might live in the cities. He bargains with God, asking that if even 50 righteous people are found, the cities would be spared. When it becomes clear that not even 10 righteous people could be found, the divine sentence is sealed. Here we see divine mercy confronted with the reality of human depravity. Even when given the chance to repent, the cities show no desire for change. The destruction that follows is swift and relentless. Two angels sent to rescue Lot, Abraham's nephew, and his family, warn them to flee without looking back. The next morning, God rains sulfur and fire down on Sodom and Gomorrah, obliterating everything and everyone. The destruction is so complete that these cities vanish from the face of the earth, becoming a symbol of total ruin. However, this story is more than just a moral lesson. It confronts us with the idea of final divine judgment. The image of fire and sulfur falling from the sky is one of the most vivid and terrifying in the Bible. serving as a reminder that unchecked evil without any attempt at redemption inevitably leads to destruction. There's also a subtle lesson about obedience and faith. During the escape, Lot's wife disobeys the angel's instructions and looks back. This simple act of disobedience results in immediate punishment. She is turned into a pillar of salt. This small but significant detail reinforces the idea that strict adherence to divine instructions is essential for survival. There's no room for doubt or hesitation when faced with a divine command, especially in a moment of such severe judgment. Moreover, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah makes us reflect on the corruption of society and how far a culture can stray from divine values before intervention becomes necessary. The cities weren't destroyed for a single sin, but for an entire culture that had completely rejected principles of justice, hospitality, and reverence for God. This narrative leads us to consider the fragility of human morality and how quickly we can stray from the right path. The consequences are devastating not just for individuals, but for entire societies. And so, Sodom and Gomorrah remain an eternal warning, not just about the consequences of sin, but about the cost of living in a community that collectively turns its back on divine principles. The echoes of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah still resonate as we turn to another set of texts that carry a chilling prophetic message, the visions of the prophet Daniel. At the heart of these texts is the famous prophecy of Daniel, a mystery that has captivated and frightened those who try to decipher it for centuries. Daniel, a young Jewish exile in Babylon, stands out for his wisdom and his ability to interpret dreams. Among the many visions he receives, one of the most puzzling is the one about the end times. This vision, recorded in chapter 7 of his book, describes 4 great beasts rising from the sea, each symbolizing empires that will rise and fall before the end of time. But it's the last of these beasts that causes the most fear, described as terrifying and dreadful and extremely strong, with iron teeth and 10 horns, an image symbolizing overwhelming and destructive power. This vision goes beyond a simple prophecy about empires. It speaks of the rise of a final power, a mysterious and evil figure often interpreted as the Antichrist. Daniel describes this being as a little horn that rises among the others, speaking great things and making war against the saints. This figure openly defies God, ruling with brutality until divine judgment finally falls upon him, leading to his destruction. Daniel's prophecy is one of the most complex in the Bible, mixing apocalyptic symbols with a narrative that promises the final victory of good over evil. However, the complexity of the vision doesn't lessen its impact. On the contrary, it confronts us with the idea that the world as we know it is destined to go through a period of tribulation before divine order is restored. One of the most intriguing aspects of the prophecy is the notion of a time, times, and half a time, which marks the period of this evil power's reign before God intervenes. This calculation of time has been a subject of speculation by theologians and scholars over the centuries, with many trying to discern when these events will begin or if they are already underway. This uncertainty creates a sense of urgency, as if humanity is always on the brink of a predetermined fate, just waiting for the last piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Moreover, Daniel's vision includes a promise of redemption. In the end, after the fall of the evil empire, God establishes his kingdom, an eternal kingdom that will never be destroyed. This victorious ending offers powerful hope, a reminder that despite the darkness that may dominate the world, the light of divine justice will ultimately prevail. While Daniel's visions give us a disturbing glimpse of future events, the book of Revelation, written by the Apostle John, dives even deeper into the mysteries of the end times. In this book, we find some of the most terrifying and symbolic images in the Bible, a vivid description of what's to come when the world as we know it comes to an end. Revelation is a text filled with symbols and metaphors that have been interpreted in various ways over the centuries. But no matter the interpretation, John's visions are undeniably powerful and full of hidden meanings. He tells us about a time of tribulation, a period of distress like never before, where natural disasters, wars, and plagues will sweep across the earth. But beyond the physical calamities, there's a spiritual conflict at play, a final battle between good and evil that will determine humanity's eternal destiny. One of the first signs of the apocalypse is the appearance of the four horsemen, sinister figures that symbolize conquest, war, famine, and death. These horsemen, each riding a different colored horse, represent forces that will devastate the world, bringing destruction and chaos in their wake. They are not just agents of physical destruction, but also symbols of the spiritual and moral conditions that will dominate the world in the end times. The sequence of events continues with the opening of the seven seals, each one unleashing a new wave of calamities. With the breaking of the sixth seal, there's a great earthquake, the sun turns black like sackcloth, and the moon turns to blood. These apocalyptic images evoke a sense of despair and fear, suggesting that the very universe is unraveling in the face of divine wrath. However, perhaps the most terrifying symbol in Revelation is the beast, described as a creature with 7 heads and 10 horns, rising from the sea. This being, often associated with the Antichrist, represents an evil and authoritarian power that will dominate the world, persecuting the faithful and demanding absolute worship. The beast, along with the false prophet, deceives the nations, leading many away from the truth and into submission to the forces of darkness. The mark of the beast, the number 666, has been another point of fascination and speculation. The Bible warns that those who receive this mark are doomed, a mark that symbolizes total submission to evil power. This mark, which could be seen as a symbol of loyalty to a corrupt and oppressive system, continues to resonate as a warning against the temptations of power and conformity to the forces of evil. Yet, amid these descriptions of horror and devastation, Revelation also offers a vision of hope. It speaks of a new Jerusalem, a heavenly city that will descend from the sky, where there will be no more tears, no more death, and no more pain. This final vision is one of redemption and renewal, a world where evil is finally defeated and God reigns supreme, bringing eternal peace and justice. The book of Revelation, with its intense imagery and frightening prophecies, is a call to vigilance and perseverance. It reminds us that no matter how dark the circumstances may seem, evil has a definite end. The trials and tribulations described are not the end of the story, but rather a prelude to the ultimate triumph of good. This powerful narrative, which combines despair with redemption, serves as a constant reminder of the spiritual struggle that underlies human existence. Revelation challenges us to reflect on our choices, our alliances, and to recognize that, in the end, we are all part of a greater story. A story that will culminate in the final judgment and the renewal of the world. As we explore the dark secrets and terrifying prophecies of the Bible, we come across an archaeological discovery that adds even more mystery to these ancient accounts: the Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovered in the mid-20th century, these scrolls, buried for nearly 2,000 years in the caves of Qumran, offer a fascinating glimpse into biblical and apocryphal texts that expand and sometimes challenge our traditional understanding of the scriptures. The Dead Sea Scrolls include thousands of fragments containing parts of the Old Testament, along with religious texts that weren't included in the canonical Bible. These texts, written between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, are considered one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century, shedding new light on Second Temple Judaism and the origins of Christianity. Among the scrolls found are copies of the books of Isaiah, Psalms, and Deuteronomy, some of which are 1,000 years older than the previously known manuscripts. These copies, while very similar to the biblical text we know today, contain variations that raise questions about the transmission and preservation of the scriptures over the centuries. Small differences in wording, subtle changes in phrasing, can have significant implications for the interpretation of key passages. Beyond the biblical texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls contain writings that were not included in the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and the Community Rule, which describes the rules of the Qumran community. These apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts reveal a rich tradition of religious writings that existed alongside the texts that were eventually canonized. They speak of angels, demons, cosmic battles, and apocalyptic visions, broadening our understanding of the religious and cultural context of the period when the Bible was formed. The Book of Enoch, for example, is particularly fascinating. Already mentioned earlier in our journey, this text provides a detailed account of the fallen angels and the Nephilim, exploring the nature of evil and divine intervention in a way that the canonical Bible only hints at. Its inclusion in the Dead Sea Scrolls suggests that these stories were known and possibly revered by certain religious groups, but for complex reasons, were not included in the Bible that has come down to us. These scrolls also reveal an intense concern with purity, law, and the end of times. The members of the Qumran community seem to view themselves as the keepers of true knowledge, set apart from the rest of humanity, whom they saw as corrupt. For them, the end of the world was imminent, and they lived their lives in preparation for this event. This apocalyptic perspective is reflected in the texts they preserved, where the final confrontation between the forces of light and darkness is described with palpable urgency. The impact of this discovery goes beyond the content of the texts. It touches the very way we understand the formation of the Bible. Before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, many believed that the biblical texts had been transmitted in a nearly uniform way, with little variation over the centuries. However, these scrolls show a more complex reality, where different versions of texts coexisted, and where the selection of what would be considered canonical was a more dynamic and contested process than previously thought. This complexity raises important questions about what was left out and why. What other secrets, contained in now lost or destroyed texts, could have changed our understanding of faith and morality? And what might these additional texts teach us about the beliefs and practices of those who lived during the time when the scriptures were being formed? The Dead Sea Scrolls, in their vastness and variety, serve as a reminder that the Bible as we know it is the result of centuries of tradition, editing, and choice. They invite us to see the scriptures not as a monolithic document, but as a living body of text shaped by those who transmitted, preserved, and sometimes hid parts of it. And in doing so, they challenge us to consider what else might be hidden in the shadows of history, waiting to be rediscovered and revealed. Among the most mysterious and powerful events in the New Testament is the resurrection of Lazarus. This miracle, performed by Jesus, is described in the Gospel of John and carries symbolism that goes beyond a simple demonstration of divine power. The story of Lazarus raises deep questions about life, death, and the meaning of faith, leading to reflections that resonate even today. Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus, becomes seriously ill. His sisters, Martha and Mary, send an urgent message to Jesus, begging him to come and heal him. However, unexpectedly, Jesus delays his visit by 2 days, and by the time he finally arrives in Bethany, Lazarus has already been dead for 4 days. This intentional delay highlights one of the central mysteries of the narrative. What was Jesus really planning by allowing Lazarus to die? When Jesus arrives, Martha runs to meet him and expresses her sorrow, but also her faith. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus responds with one of the most profound statements in the New Testament. "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." This declaration places Lazarus' resurrection in a much larger context, suggesting that Jesus' true purpose wasn't just to restore Lazarus' physical life, but to reveal a deeper spiritual truth. When Jesus finally reaches Lazarus' tomb, he orders the stone blocking the entrance to be removed. Martha, concerned, warns that the body must already be smelling bad, given the decomposition that would have started after 4 days. Even so, Jesus insists, and after praying to the Father, he calls out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And to everyone's surprise and amazement, Lazarus emerges from the tomb, still wrapped in burial cloths, alive. This miracle is the climax of the signs that Jesus performs in the Gospel of John, but it's also one of the most controversial. The question arises whether Lazarus' resurrection should be understood as a literal miracle, a historical event that defies the laws of nature, or if there is a deeper meaning to be drawn, perhaps a symbol of Jesus' victory over death, or a metaphor for the spiritual resurrection he promises to all who believe. Lazarus' resurrection also serves as a prelude to Jesus' own resurrection, which will soon happen in the narrative. By bringing Lazarus back to life, Jesus not only demonstrates his power over death, but also foreshadows the final victory he will achieve at Easter. In a sense, Lazarus becomes a symbol of the promise of eternal life offered by Christ, a life that transcends physical death and opens the door to spiritual resurrection. However, this miracle is not without consequences. Lazarus' resurrection increases the tension between Jesus and the religious authorities. This act of supernatural power is seen as a threat by the Jewish leaders, who decide that Jesus must be eliminated. Thus, Lazarus' resurrection, while confirming Jesus' divinity, also accelerates the events that will lead to his crucifixion. In a profound paradox, the act of bringing Lazarus back to life puts Jesus directly on the path to death. Moreover, the story of Lazarus invites us to reflect on our own faith and how we face the reality of death. In a world where death is seen as the definitive end, Lazarus' resurrection challenges this assumption and invites us to consider the possibility that death is actually a passage to a new form of existence. For believers, this story offers deep hope that death does not have the final word. Lazarus' resurrection made us question the nature of miracles and the deeper meaning of life and death. But at the end of this journey through the secrets and mysteries of the Bible, one question remains. What should we really know? Among fallen angels, devastating plagues, destroyed cities, apocalyptic prophecies, and ancient manuscript discoveries, what is the final revelation that ties all these elements together? Perhaps the greatest secret hidden in the pages of the Bible is the constant invitation to reflection and transformation. From the beginning, biblical texts confront us with the reality of evil, temptation, judgment, and redemption. They show us that knowledge, as dangerous as it may be, is also the path to a deeper understanding of the divine and the human. But this knowledge is not meant to be taken lightly. It requires responsibility, wisdom, and above all, faith. Throughout this narrative, we've seen how the forces of evil, whether embodied in rebellious angels, the corruption of cities, or apocalyptic beasts, are in constant opposition to the divine plan. Yet God's power is always greater, and the promise of redemption is a thread that runs through all these stories, no matter how dark or terrifying they may be. This is the secret that truly matters. No matter how much darkness seems to prevail, the light of divine justice and love will triumph. Every event, every prophecy, and every revelation calls us to a decision. How will we respond to these secrets? Will we ignore the warnings and continue on our path, or will we let these stories transform our perspective on life, death, and what comes after? The Bible, in all its complexity, doesn't offer us simple answers, but challenges us to seek the truth with humility and courage. So, the real secret we must uncover isn't just in the written words, but in how we allow those words to shape our lives. The stories of the Bible are more than just accounts of the past. They are mirrors reflecting our own struggles, fears, and hopes. They remind us that despite the challenges and uncertainties, there is a greater purpose at work, one that invites us to transcend our limited understanding and open ourselves to the mystery of faith. In the end, the final revelation is both simple and profound: to live according to the truth we find, to let knowledge transform us, and to trust that even in the darkest moments, we are in the hands of a higher power. It is this trust, this unwavering faith, that guides us through challenges and keeps us steady in the face of the most terrifying secrets and the most glorious promises hidden in the pages of the Bible. If you enjoyed this journey through the mysteries and secrets of the Bible, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep exploring fascinating topics like this. Hit the like button to help spread the word and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think, what questions you have, and what other topics you'd like to see here. Your participation is crucial for us to keep bringing reflections and stories that inspire and challenge. See you in the next video.